Ladies and gentlemen, it is with a great sense of gravity that I must speak to you about a very serious matter. First, let me say that never would I have imagined that in such a short period of time, less than a year, that this channel would have grown the way it has. I praise God for that because I truly believe when I read so many comments that the majority of you are young people with a mission of perfection, and that your attitudes are both defensive and offensive, as it should be. As our Bible says, we should strive for perfection. I see in so many of you a hunger for precision, a mission for intellectual perfection. You are not the kind to be spoon fed illusions or to swallow prepackaged wisdom without question. Years ago, they'd call people like us, they used to use the term holy rollers, as if that were something of an insult. But I tell you today that I'd rather be a holy roller than a snake oil salesman dressed up as a long haired wizard. And that, my friends, brings us to our subject today, the so called math sorcerer, a man who has taken the magic of deception far beyond a sleight of hand and into the realm of outright fraud. Let's go through this, shall we? First, a bit of background. Excuse me. Before I ever thought of being on YouTube, I had never even heard of the so called math sorcerer. And had I heard a name like that, my first instinct would have been to assume it belonged to some childish cartoon character, a failed Vegas act, perhaps, or at worst, an actual sorcerer dabbling in satanic witchcraft. But as I began making videos, I kept seeing his name pop up in my comment section. Viewers would ask if I knew the math sorcerer, as if he were some revered sage of mathematical wisdom. Obviously, I didn't. I had also gotten comments from that typical class of feeble-minded online simpletons, the kind who mistake smiling for substance, the victims of brain rot, who would say, "I don't need your preaching or meanness," and sniffing, "I'll just go to the math sorcerer instead." Pooh-hoo. As if preferring comfort over truth is something to be proud of. And I thought to myself, that math sorcerer fellow must be really popular. He must be one of those people who tell youngsters what they want to hear rather than what they should hear. I sensed, based on the comments, that was the case. So I looked up his channel. Now, when I first stumbled onto the Math Sorcerer's channel, I was expecting rigorous mathematics. Maybe even some enchanting, if I may use the word, no pun intended, problem solving. Instead, I found a strange brew of self help platitudes, and not just self help platitudes, but the sort of canned advice you might get at some discontinued, cheap books section at some cruddy, slummy dollar store. Now, I'm not saying that advice has no place on a math channel. Much to the contrary, I am a firm believer in good advice. That's why on this channel, you have, for example, the Sunday messages, among other playlists. God's word is always good advice, and it's always the right advice. But this is different. The impression I immediately got after watching several of his motivational, so-called, advice videos is the sort of motivational fluff a drunkard could expect from some underpaid waiter in a bar moonlighting as a multi-level marketing recruiter. It's just fortune cookie wisdom with a longer runtime. Math takes a backseat to silly pep talks and questionable books, some of which were clearly cranked out by AI faster than you'd get a diploma from a scam diploma mill. And I'll get to that in a bit. And after doing due diligence on the fake books he is selling, among other things, I cannot but conclude what many others have already concluded. The math sorcerer is a charlatan, a peddler of AI junk who dares to drape himself in the noble robes of mathematics while profaning its sanctity, because mathematics represents the truths of God, and he profanes it with AI generated trash, artificial tripe. He does not create, he does not labor, he does not think. He is akin to a maggot feasting upon poor students from developing countries, selling to an audience that is too naive to see through his fraudulence. Mathematics is not a marketplace for the dilettante to sell snake oil. It is a sacred pursuit, the most austere of all disciplines. Mathematics is demanding of rigor, of sacrifice, and of intellectual purity. And yet this sorcerer, an impostor in every sense, it's witchcraft indeed, has found it fit to reduce our profession, our vocation, better said, to a mere parlor trick, an exercise in deception for personal gain. Listen to me, young people, we are the inheritors of Euclid, of Newton, of Euler, and many other great minds that came before us and are, in fact, still with us, for there are still so many great mathematicians out there who bless us with the truths of God's universe. And the mathematical truths never die. True math never dies. We cannot stand idly by while this sorcerer, traffics AI to vulnerable young people who don't know any better. He is no scholar, no teacher, and like the worst of medieval alchemists, he promises gold but delivers lead, turning students' hard-earned money into worthless, mass-produced junk. We cannot allow this charlatan to make a mockery of our discipline. Shall we permit him to peddle his AI-generated dribble, his pseudo-books, his base dilutions of higher thought to a public that does not yet know better? Well, that would be akin to betraying our very calling, to abandon the rigor and discipline that defines us as mathematicians and men of God. I encourage you all to act with all the fury and precision that befits our station. We must expose the sorcerer at every turn, drag his name through the harsh light of truth. We must denounce his trickery. How shall we do this? How shall we do this is the question. First, I'd like to thank all those young people who have already exposed the math sorcerer on their end. I was going to name one of them, but I was not sure if he wanted me to name him. So if he wants to let himself known, please leave a comment here and I will link your video in the description. Or you can email me. Let us work together to make the name Math Sorcerer synonymous with deception and disgrace, so that no student who is serious about mathematical learning will take him seriously, or worse yet, spend money on his fake AI-produced books. He has no foundation, no substance, no true standing in the realm of reason. Now, there are those who perhaps might say that this is unnecessary drama. But this is not drama, Math Sorcerer. This is your reality check. They call this conjurer, conjecturist perhaps, the Math Sorcerer, eh? A fitting name. For he peddles illusion. He waves a digital wand, and behold, a book appears. And another, and another, and another. But who wrote those books? Where is the ink-stained hand that has toiled over the maddening abyss of trying to create truly good exercises for students? Nowhere, because the hand does not exist. The mind does not exist. Only a machine vomiting words like a drunken oracle. This is a book. This is a book that is written, Math Sorcerer. Don't know if you could see. Now, I write my books. This is what I call a manuscript. And when I write those, this is for you young people who are curious how I write my books. First, I write everything by hand. I use a pen, and I do everything by hand. Now, you don't have to. Those of you who write books, you know this is just my style. I like to write everything by hand in an empty manuscript, and then I go through everything, check everything. I can revise here. I can edit. And then when it's ready to print, you see I have a lot of exercises in here. These are all the algebra exercises. Once I have this written out, Then I go, it goes into typing, and I use a typewriter. You don't have to use a typewriter. I'm just saying, I'm explaining the production process for those of you who are curious as to how I write my books. But any author can tell you that you do not write books. You do not spit out hundreds of books in a week or less, as we have seen the math sorcerer been doing. And we'll get to that. And yet he stands unchallenged. He deletes the questions. He evades the scrutiny. Why? Because, like all pretenders, he knows his edifice is built on sand. 1,000 AI generated books are not worth a single page or a single line of Euler and other great mathematicians, and not even the worst math book. If that math book is accurate and truly written by an author, by a real person, by a human author, this man is not proving theorems. He's playing copy paste with AI. He's mass producing knock-off books, hoping no one asks too many questions. But many of us are. We are asking the questions. And when people call him out, what does he do? Deletes the comments, ducks the questions. He knows the second he stops hiding, he's finished. But, Mass Sorcerer, I know you're watching this. Here's a little secret for you. We're not going to let this slide. I encourage all you young people, by the way, report the books to Amazon. Because evidence shows all his recent books are AI generated, which is a clear violation of Amazon's rules. I'm going to quote to you exactly what Amazon says directly from the source. I want to quote to you. I printed out KDP. KDP is Amazon's publishing company or publishing section. And here is the policy on using AI to sell books. It says, and I quote, artificial intelligence, AI content includes text, images, or translations. We require you, did you hear that, Mass Sorcerer? We require, that's a command, it's not optional. We require you to inform us. Inform is a verb, Math Sorcerer, that means to tell them. To inform us of AI generated content, text, images, or translations when you publish a new book or make, notice the word or, when you publish a new book or make edits to and republish an existing book through KDP. AI generated images include cover and interior images and artwork. You are not required to disclose AI assisted content. We distinguish between AI generated and AI assisted content as follows. AI generated. We define AI generated content as text, images, or translations created by an AI-based tool. If you used an AI-based tool to create the actual content, whether text, images, or translations, it is considered AI generated, even if you applied substantial edits afterwards. Did you get that, Mass Sorcerer? Even if you applied, which you didn't, because all the evidence that we have points to the contrary, even if you applied substantial edits afterwards. And then and then they give you the definition of AI assistant. It also says at the end, you are responsible for verifying that all AI generated and or AI assisted content adheres to all content guidelines, including by complying with all applicable intellectual property rights. So already we have a problem because all evidence points to the fact that the math sorcerer has actually not has been producing only AI generated, exclusively AI generated books. We'll get to that in a moment, but just keep that in mind. Listen, I don't care if he's got a PhD. He doesn't, by the way, but it doesn't matter. I don't either. I don't care if he has an honorary degree or a stack of diplomas high enough to block the sun. Paper doesn't prove a man, and you all know this because I've said it many times on this channel. I've said many times that I don't really care about your degrees because the greatest mathematicians in history wouldn't have cared for that much either. Why should we? G.H. Hardy himself, a great mathematician from Cambridge, had very little patience with that. He was very critical, for example, of the tripos exams. Listen, I'd rather stand shoulder to shoulder with men who've done time, or even men doing time, who've bled for what they believe in, than waste a second entertaining some clown who hides behind AI generated dribble. I will, I'm going to quote to you some of the math sorcerers from some of the books that are available on Amazon. I'm going to start with a quote from one of his, well, it's not even his, from one of the AI generated books um, that is called The Most Ridiculous Math Book on Earth. At least the title does it some justice because it is very much ridiculous. In the, I obviously didn't buy the book, but I was able to print out the sample that's available. That it lets you read some of the gibberish that's on there. It says introduction. This is chapter 1 that is called Math Karaoke. Introduction. It says sing your way to success. What if solving math problems could be as fun as belting out your favorite song in the shower? Welcome to Math Karaoke, where equations meet melodies and learning math becomes a concert-worthy performance. Forget boring textbooks. Grab a microphone or a hairbrush, it says in the parentheses, and let's turn your math struggles into chart-topping hits. Seriously. Sing your way to success. We've wandered into a conservatory rather than a treatise on mathematics. To be fair, he did, or the AI, titled the book as ridiculous. So it appears that proofs, analysis is no longer a pursuit, or mathematics is no longer a pursuit of a reason and intellect, but an occasion for warbling into a hairbrush. How splendid. Perhaps the next great theorem will be proven not through rigorous deduction, but through interpretive dance in the jungle somewhere. Mathematics, once the austere and noble pursuit of minds such as Euler's, has now been reduced to a concert-worthy performance. What's next? Fourier analysis as a Broadway musical? The prime number theorem explained through tap dance. Let us dispense with axioms and proofs entirely and replace them with a catchy chorus and a key change. But beyond the sheer frivolity, the whole thing is pedagogically bankrupt. Mathematics is learned through discipline, deep thought, and practice, and not through gimmicks that make it seem like an idle pastime. The student who approaches mathematics, if you expect it to be fun in the way karaoke is fun, well, not fun for me, karaoke, but might be for some, will soon find himself in despair when faced with a proof that resists intuition or an equation that does not conveniently rhyme. A true educator instills, especially a math educator, you instill an appreciation for rigor, not the illusion that mastery can be achieved through some kind of ridiculous spectacle. If this is the future, ladies and gentlemen, of mathematical exposition, I for sure will not be singing along. And I hope no student who truly hopes to learn will be singing along with that nonsense. And it just gets worse and worse. Um, for example, in the same book, the most ridiculous math book on earth, if you look at page 58, there is a heading in there, and it says real life. Um, what was it? Real life. Where was it? Here it is. Real life success stories. And I'm quoting again. Here are some inspiring examples of people who've used TikTok timer math. Seriously, Math Sorcerer, TikTok timer math, really. TikTok timer math to level up their skills. He mentions a girl by the name of Leela, a high school sophomore, created a TikTok series where she solved, are you listening, everybody? Listen to this. She solved math problems in under 30 seconds. Her videos went viral. I hope you're all listening. He says in the book, her videos went viral. And now she's known as, quote unquote, the math speed queen. It's a lie. All you have to do is a quick Google search for the speed queen, and it doesn't show up. Matt Sorcerer, why are you playing games with people? Why are you lying in your books? You have to be stopped. There's more. There's more. Because here's another quote from his other book that is called Become a Math Genius in 5 Minutes a Day. I mean, all of it, it's just so ridiculous. The power of tiny habits. Listen to this, everybody. Here's a fun fact. If you are you listening, everybody? If you improve by just 1% every day, you will be 37 times better by the end of the year. That's the magic of small, consistent effort. So don't worry about mastering calculus or solving huge equations right now. Just focus on showing up for 5 minutes a day. I mean, the statement omits the crucial detail that you need to, at best, there's something called compound interest, for example, that the improvement is compounded daily. But a student who doesn't know those things will interpret improving by 1% every day, uh, most likely as a simple linear increase, just adding 1% of the original value each day. Funny how this 1% per day idea never mentions the diminishing returns of skill acquisition. If this were actually true, and it's not, people who studied math daily for a year would all be Fields medalists, right? But this is the kind of garbage that the math sorcerer is peddling. I'm going to link in the description of this video. There is a subreddit that discusses in great detail also a lot more evidence. I don't have time to get into all the evidence, but you can see a lot of the evidence on there. And if the gentleman who he knows who he is, if you give me permission to link your video in the description, I will be happy to do that because I really admire. Thank you for your research. Thanks to your video, this was brought to my attention. It popped up on my notifications, and I thought it was a very well made. You mentioned his course on Udemy. Now that's another scandal because the math sorcerer hides his course behind the paywall when in fact a lot of the material is already free. So my advice to us all is call out and denounce the math sorcerer, and let's get back to something serious with mathematics. The guy it's just a fraud. And that's worst case scenario. Maybe he's just someone who is very misguided. But I think he knows exactly what he's doing. And it's not acceptable, math sorcerer. You need to stop. Stop it.